Hello everyone, my name is Avarice and I welcome you to the very first Fable mod review. This is going to be a new series that I'm hoping to work on, where I will play through mods created by members of the Fable community, give you all the necessary information you need to know about the mod, and also explain my thoughts about them based on my experience. With the introduction now out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video. In this video, I'll be trying out a mod called FableMenu, which was released just 4 days ago on the 23rd of April 2022 by a user called Maka. A link to a video of the author demonstrating the mod will be in the video description, which also contains a link to their website where you can download the mod if you are ever interested in trying it out for yourself. Some important notes listed on the website by the mod author are that this mod has only been tested out on the Steam version of Fable the Lost Chapters for PC. It has features such as changing the hero's appearance, and other values such as your health, gold, and even your current position. It contains a free camera, the ability to freeze the camera, and the option to change your field of view. Now, some of these are features that I always thought were only available in the debug versions of the game, but it seems someone finally managed to make it accessible in the retail version of Fable TLC, which is very nice to see. It also has options for changing the time of day, spawning new objects in the world, hiding the heads-up display, enabling God mode, and this last one called Spell Slow Motion. I'm not too sure what that one means, but I guess if we download the mod then we're going to find out anyways. The installation process is very simple too. All you have to do is download the mod, which will be packaged inside of a WinRAR file. Then once it is downloaded, you just look for your game's file directory. So in my example, it's in Steam, Steam Apps, Common. Open up your Fable the Lost Chapters folder and then drop the contents of the WinRAR file into your game folder. This is known as the root folder, where you can find the executable file which launches the game. It should take a couple of seconds to copy over, and then there you go, you've finished, you've installed the mod. Now that the mod is installed, you can boot up the game and either create a new save file or load a profile that you have already created. I noticed on the website for FableMenu, the mod author says that once you start the game, all you have to do is press this key, which if you didn't know is called the tilde key, that little squiggly line that you see above the tab key. Well, I pressed it and nothing happened. At first I thought that perhaps I installed the mod wrong, but as I just showed you, the installation is very simple. If anything, it is probably more of a challenge to actually get it wrong. Then I remember that I don't actually have an English or an American keyboard, which means that for me, the tilde key is actually next to the enter key. So I pressed it and that didn't really work either. What did seem to work though was the key right next to that, which on my keyboard is the @ symbol. They also mention that this is the default key for opening up the mod menu, which implies that it might be possible for you to change it, so bear that in mind if you're also having any issues getting the mod menu to open at first. When you open up the mod menu for the first time, you will notice all these tabs, along with a whole bunch of options and values that you can mess around with. There are 4 tabs that you can look through, which act as categories for the type of options you can choose from. There is Player, Camera, World, and Miscellaneous. We'll start off with Player, which contains options that allow you to control your character's appearance, stats, and things of that nature. Our first couple of options involve the character's health. You can insert any value that you want, and your health will immediately reflect that new value. So if I make my health 10, then it will decrease down to 10. If I change the value to 200, then it will increase my health to 200. There is also the maximum health, which will determine the capacity of health that the player has. There doesn't appear to be a limit for this either, so you can type in an absurd number like 1250 for example, and the health bar graphic will just exceed the screen. Next up is the total amount of gold that the player has. We can increase this value and it will give us more gold. If we decrease this value, then it will take the gold away from the player. Simple enough. It appears Fable has a limit on the amount of gold that the player can carry at one time. So if you try to exceed this amount, then the game will just act like your gold amount is in the minuses. So for example, here I have like -1 trillion or something like that, when in reality I just have more money than the game can actually display. Underneath that, we have an option for age. However, I learned that this doesn't actually affect the hero's appearance. It simply changes the value that can be found on the stats screen. So my character, as you can see, is currently 36 years old. If we change this value to 10, then go back, the stats screen will start to reflect this new change. Here we have two options that you can simply toggle on and off. These are can use weapons and can use will. As you probably know from playing the game, certain towns like Bowerstone for example won't allow you to use your weapons or have access to your will abilities. This applies to Bowerstone South, Bowerstone North and Lady Grey's mansion. But by turning on these two options, we can now massacre this entire town to our heart's content. Now for the big one. All of these sliders determine the hero's morphs. As you're probably already aware, in Fable, the hero morphs depending on certain things like strength, skill, will, age, alignment, and fatness. These sliders include options for all of those that I just mentioned, along with Berserk. So if we test out each one individually, we can have a really muscular hero by maxing out strength. We can also max out Berserk to add even more mass to our character. We can make it so our character is only maxed in will, which gives that blue effect around the hands. You can also max out skill, which will make your character incredibly tall and skinny. There's age, which will actually determine the appearance of the character this time. Then you have alignment, so you can make yourself neutral, good, or evil. And finally, there is fatness, which obviously determines how big your character's belly size is. Once you have set the sliders however you want them, simply click the update button below all of them and it should change your character's appearance. Some of these changes aren't instant though, like age, will, or going full good alignment, so you will have to enter a new region for some of these changes to take place. Not only do you have the sliders, but you also have an option which simply says Kid. If you click this button and update your character, then you will notice that it swaps to the teenager mesh for the hero that we have access to during the guild training part of the game. At the bottom of the player tab, there is what appears to be an XYZ coordinates, or in other words, the exact location that the player is standing on the map. If you change this value, then you will notice that the hero will start to move to a new location on the map. Since it includes the Z axis, it is also possible to increase this value so that you can launch yourself into the air. Be careful when messing around with these values though, because inserting random numbers can cause you to spawn outside of the map, as demonstrated here. Sometimes it can even take you to another map entirely, like what happened here. I was in Lookout Point, and now I'm in Greatwood Gorge for some reason. I didn't even know the game could work like that, without some form of loading screen. If you do manage to get stuck like this though, then all you have to do is just teleport away. Next up is the camera tab. Like its name suggests, these are options that you can use to help change the way that you interact with the in-game camera. This tab is probably my personal favourite, as these are changes that I've been waiting for ages to see accessible in the retail game. Our first option that is available is FOV, which is an acronym for Field of View. The best way to describe Field of View is that it's the maximum area that the camera can capture in a single image. To give you an example, whenever you zoom in and out of the in-game camera to get a better look at your character, the field of view actually changes. This is because not only is the position of the camera changing, but the amount of space that the camera can take up in a single frame is also getting smaller or wider, depending on if you are zooming in or zooming out respectively. In this specific case, the reason for it is to add more of a focus on the hero. Think of it as the camera's peripheral vision. It's not usually something you really take notice of when playing a game, but for things like cutscenes, changing the FOV can help give the game a more dramatic feel. If you make the FOV too small, then the camera will just start to feel very claustrophobic, and since the focus of the camera is on the hero's actual head, then it will often feel like their face is taking priority over the screen. If we make the FOV higher, then more of the world can be shown to us in a single frame. However, if we keep making the FOV higher, then it will start to give off this fisheye lens effect. What's even more strange is that if you keep going even further with the FOV, then you will eventually hit a point where it does the exact same thing, but upside down for some unknown reason. While it does look really strange to have the sides of the screen stretched out like this, there are actually a lot of players for things like FPS games who often take advantage of all this space in their peripheral vision, as it helps them to see visual information that otherwise wouldn't be immediately obvious to them, such as enemies attacking them from the sides, or in third-person games like Fable, it can even help you notice enemies attacking you from behind, all of which would not be accessible to you when playing these kinds of games with the default settings. After FOV, we have Freeze Position. This literally freezes the camera in its current place for you to help create alternative camera angles whilst also allowing you to play the game at the same time. This is something that you can mod in yourself by changing the camera type in something like Chocolate or ShadowNet. However, that often means playing a version of the game where one of your cameras that you use to control your hero will always be stuck in one place, something that no one wants to deal with. This mod, on the other hand, makes life so much easier by allowing you to just activate it as a feature whenever you want without having to worry about how the game plays afterwards. Our final option is the free camera. This allows you to control the camera instead of your character, so that you can look around the map or view things from a completely different angle. When combined with freeze position, you can effectively create any camera angle that you want, freeze it in place, and then start playing the game from a totally new perspective. It's great for things like recording videos or taking screenshots of areas that you enjoy looking at. The only real issue with this free camera is that by default, it doesn't appear to be as smooth as the free cam which is available in the debug build. Almost like it is moving at a slower frame rate, which causes this sort of janky feeling whenever I move the camera around. I'll explain more about this later on in the video and how you can resolve this issue. Now it is time for what is known as the World tab. This gives a variety of options to the player and allows them to have a lot more control over how they can alter the world around them. The first one on this tab is just a toggle option that allows you to add or remove the minimap on the top right corner of the screen. Very straightforward. After that we have another toggle option that is titled as Kill Mode. This is sort of like the safety feature in Fable 2, where if you turn the safety off then it will switch the highlight around a character to red, and you can automatically attack or kill any non-hostile NPC that is near you. I can see this being useful if, say, you want to attack a group of villagers or guards by surprise, rather than having to target each NPC individually before they get hostile. Now it is time for, well, time. With this slider we can change the speed at which time passes in the game. As expected, if we increase the value that is provided by the slider, then we can make time pass really quickly. This results in a cool effect that can be viewed in the sky, since the textures that are responsible for the sky and the clouds are tied to the time of day. If we decrease this value, then time will pass by slowly. Then, just underneath this slider we have a toggle for opening up settings that will change the time of day. This is incredibly useful if you want to change day to night, or vice versa, without using beds and certain consumables like the golden carrot and the moonfish. For example, I usually prefer to try and record clips of the game during the daytime, but there isn't really a bed in every map for you to sleep in. But with this tool I can just change the time of day without having to go all the way back to a town. This next part is really useful for people who want to spawn objects into the game world, but don't want to spend the time going out of the game, going into Chocolate Box, and then placing an object onto the map, saving the game files, and then going back into the game to obtain it. Instead, if you already know the data name of an object, so in this example I use object iron longsword, it will then spit out the ID for that object and you can spawn it in a set of coordinates that you've allocated in the 3 boxes at the top. You can also make this easier for yourself by clicking this button which says Get Player Position to determine where you want the object to be spawned. This only works for objects like rocks, buildings, items, weapons, equipment, things like that. If you try to spawn an NPC then it will give you the ID, but it will just crash the game if you try to actually create it. Something you should also bear in mind is that pretty much everything in the game is named in full uppercase letters, so if you try to type it out in lowercase letters then the program won't recognise what it is you're referring to in the game files. And here we have the final tab that is labelled as miscellaneous, which is basically a fancy way of saying other or not categorised. These are just 3 options that you can toggle on or off whenever you want. First up is an option to hide the HUD. HUD being an acronym for Heads-Up Display, which is the graphics that you can see on the screen that shows up how much health and mana you have, what actions you can perform, the minimap, and the hotkeys. As I mentioned before, you just toggle it on or off. Very simple. This is great for people who want to take their own personal screenshots or record footage for something like a machinima. This is because it removes all of the graphics from the screen and gives the game a bit more of a realistic touch to it. This also includes the graphics for highlighting villages, the exclamation mark from expressions, and things like the trophy minigame. The only downside to this feature is that for some reason you can't use most of the custom hotkeys that would normally be at the bottom of your screen. As you can see here, I'm trying to turn my lamp off with the HUD turned off, but it won't let me even though I'm pressing the correct key. However, you can use the 3 hotkeys that appear whenever you are highlighting a villager. After that, we have an option for God mode. I imagine most of you already understand the concept of God mode, but in a lot of games it basically means cheat mode. In some games you get a lot of money, in some games you get infinite ammo, and in games like Fable, it means you can't lose health. As you can see here, I got the attention of the guards in Oakville, and no matter how much they attack me, it does no damage whatsoever. If you open up the mod menu, you will notice that for some reason it sets your health to 1000, but keeps the maximum health the same value as it was before, which doesn't really matter considering you can't lose any health now anyways, but it seems to be some kind of side effect of using this command. Even though you're invincible, you can still get scars though, so bear that in mind if you're going to get yourself in a situation where you'll take some serious damage. Now we are up to the final option that is available in FableMenu, which is slow motion. When I originally read this on the website, I didn't really know what it meant, but from what I can see after trying out the mod, it appears to force slow time without you actually needing to cast the spell. Just like when performing the slow time spell, your character plays at a normal speed, while creatures, villagers, and projectiles move a lot slower than you do. This is really useful for people who haven't purchased the slow time spell yet, or they don't have a lot of mana to use the spell, and basically want to play Fable on easy mode. Be careful though, as it appears using certain spells like Assassin Rush for example, will cause the slow motion effect to suddenly stop. Now that I've demonstrated everything that the mod can do straight out of the box, here is something I realised you can do by editing the mod's ini file. Remember earlier how I said that it might be possible for you to change the key which displays the mod menu when you are playing the game? Well, if you go back into the game files after installing the mod, and then open up the FableMenu.ini file that we placed in there during the installation part of the video, then you will see a line of text which says iMenu open key. This appears to be the line of text that you need to change in order to open the mod menu. After that we have I override constant FPS. If you recall, I said that I had a bit more to talk about in regards to the free camera. With the ini file we can change the value from 15 to something smoother like 30 or 60. We aren't finished yet though. Just below the value that we have just changed is yet another setting called Be Slow Motion Everywhere. You will also want to change that from false to true. Then when we go back into the game, our new changes should be saved. If you did what I did and changed your FPS to 60, then you might notice that everything is extremely fast now. But it is only temporary, as we can now use the slow motion option in combination with this new FPS setting, and then we have ourselves a smoother free camera. It isn't perfect, but it's a little bit better than before. If we want to give the scene more of a cinematic feel, then we can use all of the other settings that I mentioned, like utilizing the free camera, freezing the position of the camera, changing the field of view, and removing the heads-up display to help us achieve that. And that pretty much sums up everything I could find relating to the Fable menu mod. In conclusion, not only is it a very good quality mod, but it is a great utility for both modders and video editors that want to take advantage of certain options that make life easier. It's simple to install, simple to use, and the only time it ever crashed for me when I tried to spawn a creature which isn't really a fault of the mod, as it does say objects specifically. There have been mods like this in the past, like Fable Hook and Fable Trainer, but they required you to go out of the game to make changes and then go back into the game for them to take effect. Not only that, but with modern machines, a lot of those programs trigger your antivirus because they need to hook into your game files. This means that sometimes it wouldn't even work, since the files would just get deleted from your machine. However, this mod goes directly into your game files and does everything instantly with just the touch of a button. There's not really any effort required on your part either. In fact, I would argue that out of any mod that has ever been released for Fable, this is like a mandatory mod. Everyone should at least try it out, and I feel like with enough time, anyone who does try it will start to realise how essential this mod actually is for enjoying the game. Now that I have praised the mod for everything it can do, I have to say that there is some flaws here and there. The frames per second on the free camera and the inability to use your hotkeys while the heads-up display is disabled are the only real issues I have with using this mod. That's mainly due to the fact that it means I have to put in extra effort to enjoy them. But I doubt that these are a fault of the person who programmed the mod, which means that the only real criticism I can give to this mod is pretty much keep doing what you are doing and see if you can add more changes for us to tinker around with. Obviously, I'm not trying to say this as though I know how much effort goes into something like this. I really don't. But if you can build on top of this program and add things like being able to change the capacity of mana we have, being able to spawn creatures into the game world like Balverines or villagers, you know, things that will allow us to have more control over how we play the game, then I think this mod would be perfect for both people who are new to modding and people who are experienced at modding but want something that helps to speed up the process. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video all the way to the end. I'm not gonna lie, I sort of underestimated the amount of effort that actually goes into reviewing something, especially if you want to cover everything that you can about a particular subject. Anyways, if you are interested in trying out this mod for yourself, then all the necessary links will be in the video description. If you enjoyed your time watching this video, then don't forget to either like, comment or subscribe to not only show me that this is something you are interested in, but to help YouTube keep you updated with any future videos that I have planned. I would also like to thank each of my channel members who help to support everything I'm doing directly. Those are Typed Metal 125, Smocky the Bunny, Video Gaming Reaper, and Sue R. Now, if you guys don't mind, I suddenly feel the urge to start raiding Bowerstone, so I will see you all in the next video.